Elias Ford, a human from Earth, had never imagined his life would take such a drastic turn. He had always been a soldier, someone trained to protect and serve, but never had he thought his destiny would intertwine with that of an alien ruler. Yet here he was, standing in the heart of a vast intergalactic empire, looking into the eyes of the alien queen, her gaze powerful, full of mystery and authority. Their first meeting had been unexpected, a moment that neither of them would ever forget. The diplomatic mission was supposed to be routine. Earth had sent representatives to meet with the alien civilizations in the hopes of forming alliances. But as the talks progressed, everything took a turn for the worse. An ambush had been planned by a rogue faction in the Queen's empire, and soon chaos broke out. Explosions rocked the building, and screams filled the air as gunfire rang out. In the midst of it all, Elias found himself face to face with the Queen. Her royal guard had been taken by surprise, leaving her vulnerable for just a moment. Without thinking, Elias charged forward. His instincts as a soldier took over. He fought his way to her side, pushing her to safety just as a blast shook the room. In that instant, the world seemed to stop. As they both fell to the ground, Elias's hands were firmly around her, shielding her from the explosion. When they finally made it to safety, Elias's heart raced, not from the fight, but from the realization of how close they had come to death. The alien queen, with her tall, regal figure and glowing purple skin, stared at him with wide eyes. For the first time, she saw a human for what they truly were. Brave, capable, and different from the others in ways that would soon change everything. "Why did you save me?" The question came from her, and Elias wasn't sure how to respond. They were enemies, or at least supposed to be. Humans were considered beneath the aliens. Their tech was primitive, their world underdeveloped. The Queen's people had seen humans as little more than ants, insignificant and powerless in the vast expanse of the universe. Yet Elias had acted without hesitation. "I did it because it was the right thing to do," Elias replied, his voice steady even though his heart pounded in his chest. He didn't need to explain himself to her. His actions spoke for him. The Queen seemed to ponder his words for a moment, and something flickered in her gaze. Something she hadn't expected to feel for a human. Respect. For the first time, she felt something stir inside her that she couldn't quite place. It wasn't fear, nor was it admiration. It was curiosity. Curiosity about the man who had risked his life for hers, a man who seemed so different from her own people, yet in some ways so alike. As the days passed, Elias became a regular visitor in the Queen's court, though their interactions were always carefully controlled. The world they lived in was one of rules, and the Queen, as ruler of millions of planets, had to maintain control at all costs. Yet, despite the boundaries that were supposed to keep them apart, something continued to draw them together. She found herself watching him, fascinated by his strength and resilience, his ability to see things from a different perspective. And when she spoke to him, there was a warmth in his voice, a softness that no one had ever shown her before. For someone who had ruled her empire for centuries, the Queen had never experienced this kind of connection. Her people were distant, always aware of their power, always calculating their next move. But Elias was different. He was honest, straightforward, and unafraid to show his feelings. One evening, as the sun set over the alien city, glowing with colors Elias had never seen before, the Queen invited him to walk with her in the royal gardens. They had spoken many times since the ambush, but this was the first time she had invited him to join her in such a personal setting. "I have to ask," the Queen began, her voice soft, almost hesitant.
"Why did you come to my aid?" Elias looked at her, a soft smile crossing his face. "I told you."
It was the right thing to do. "You were in danger, and I couldn't just stand by." The Queen studied him closely. "You are a soldier, yes? But I've heard rumors of your people, of how you see the world. You've been trained to fight, but there's more to you, isn't there?" Elias paused, surprised by her insight. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, her voice growing quiet. "That you're not like the others. You're not just a weapon. There's something more inside you." The words hung in the air between them. Elias felt something stir inside him. He had always known he wasn't like everyone else. He had joined the military because he believed in fighting for the right cause, but there was always something that bothered him about the way wars were fought. It wasn't just about the battle. It was about the people, the lives at stake, and somehow he saw that same belief reflected in the Queen. For the first time, Elias felt that there was a connection between them that went beyond politics, beyond the war that separated their worlds. It was something deeper, something that neither of them fully understood. "I don't know what you see in me," Elias said, his voice low, "but I'm just a man." "I'm not royalty. I'm not part of your world." The Queen turned to face him fully, her regal eyes never leaving his. "Perhaps that's why I find you intriguing." Elias could hardly believe what he was hearing. For someone of her status to say such words to him, someone who had grown up in a world of war and struggle, felt almost impossible. And yet, here they were, in the quiet of the garden, speaking as equals. Their bond grew in secret. They couldn't risk letting the world know what was happening between them. The Queen's advisors would never accept it. Her people would view it as a betrayal, an insult to the ancient traditions of their empire. Humans were not meant to be with the highest rulers of the galaxy. And yet, neither the Queen nor Elias could deny the feelings that had begun to grow between them. But despite their growing closeness, the Queen knew that there was one thing they couldn't ignore: the trial of endurance. The Queen's people had a rule, one that had been in place for generations. No ruler could marry unless their partner had survived the trial of endurance, a test of strength, survival, and willpower. Only those who could prove themselves worthy would be allowed to enter into a union with the Queen. Elias had heard of the trial, but he had no idea what it truly entailed. It was said to be impossible, a brutal test in which survival was the only guarantee for success. The odds of passing were almost non-existent, and most who attempted it never returned. And yet, the Queen's people believed in it, and the law could not be ignored. The Queen had never wanted to speak of it to Elias, never wanted him to know just how impossible it would be for him to pass. But now, with their relationship growing stronger, the time had come. She had to tell him, and she feared how he would react. One night, as they sat together in her chambers, the Queen finally spoke of it. "There is a rule," she said, her voice steady but with an edge of sadness. "It is a rule of my people, one that cannot be broken. Before we can be together, before I can truly accept you as my equal, you must pass the trial of endurance." Elias turned to her, confusion and concern clouding his features.
"What's the trial? It is a test," the Queen explained, her voice solemn. "A test of survival."
"If you fail, you will die. If you succeed, you will be proven worthy." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. He wasn't afraid of death, but the thought of losing her, of never being able to be with her, was unbearable. "I'll do it," he said, determination settling in his chest. He didn't know what the trial entailed, but he would face it for her. He had already risked his life once to save her. Now he would do whatever it took to be with her. The Queen looked at him, her heart heavy. "It is not as simple as you think, Elias. The trial is meant for those who are stronger than you can imagine." But Elias just nodded. He was ready to face whatever impossible challenge awaited him. For the Queen. For their love. And so, their journey began. One that would test them both in ways they couldn't yet understand. Elias stood at the edge of the platform, staring out at the vast landscape before him. The alien world stretched out, a harsh, unforgiving land that had been chosen for the trial of endurance. The ground was cracked and barren, and the sky overhead seemed to press down with an oppressive weight. It was a world that showed no mercy, a world where survival would be nothing short of impossible for anyone who wasn't prepared for the worst. The alien queen, who had accompanied him to the edge of the platform, stood beside him, her presence radiating authority and grace. She had been quiet during their journey, her thoughts seemingly lost in the gravity of what was about to happen. Elias could see the concern in her eyes, the worry that lingered just beneath the surface. She had never wished for this moment, but now that it had come, there was nothing more she could do to protect him. She was a queen, but even she couldn't bend the laws of her people. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice low and filled with an emotion that Elias couldn't quite place. It was as if she was torn between two worlds, one where duty came first, and another where her heart yearned for him. Elias turned to her, a determined look on his face.
"I'm sure. You've given me everything I need to know."
The queen studied him for a moment, her eyes filled with both fear and admiration. She had never doubted his strength, but the trial was something different. No one had ever survived it. It was a test of everything a person could endure: mind, body, and spirit. And the odds of him surviving were nearly non-existent. The queen knew that. But there was still a part of her that couldn't shake the hope that perhaps Elias, the man who had already defied all expectations, could do the impossible. "I'll be waiting for you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Whatever happens, I'll be waiting." Elias nodded, trying to reassure her, even though he wasn't sure if he was reassuring her or himself. "I'll come back. For you. And nothing is going to stop me." With that, he turned and stepped forward, leaving her behind. The platform began to lower, carrying him down to the surface of the planet. The queen watched him go, her heart aching as she realized just how much she had come to care for this human. Her empire, her people, her duty, they all demanded she stay detached, but Elias had shattered the walls she had built around herself. As Elias descended, the harsh winds of the planet howled in the distance, and the ground below seemed to stretch endlessly. When his feet finally touched the barren earth, he felt a cold shiver run through him. The air here was thinner than he had anticipated, and the ground beneath his boots seemed to crack with every step. The world was silent, a silence so deep it felt suffocating. No birds, no animals, no sounds of life, just the wind and the earth itself. He could hear his heart beating in his chest as he took his first few steps forward. His body was already beginning to feel the strain of the environment. The thin air made it difficult to breathe, and the temperature was a constant reminder that this world wasn't designed for human life. His suit, though high-tech, was only capable of protecting him so much. The trial had already begun, and the first test was simple: survive. As he walked, he tried to focus on the task at hand. The trial was designed to break him, to force him to give in to his weaknesses and doubts, but he couldn't afford to let that happen. He thought of the queen, of the moments they had shared. Her voice echoed in his mind, reminding him of what he was fighting for. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about her. He had to prove that he was worthy of her love, worthy of standing by her side, no matter what the trial demanded of him. The terrain began to change as Elias ventured further into the heart of the planet. The flat, cracked ground gave way to rocky hills and sharp cliffs. The air grew colder, the wind stronger. He could feel the effects on his body. His muscles ached, his throat felt dry, and his mind began to cloud with exhaustion. But he kept moving forward. He had no choice. Hours passed, or perhaps it was days. Time seemed to lose its meaning on this planet, where every minute felt like an eternity. Elias pushed his body to its limits, refusing to stop. He could feel the hunger gnawing at him, and his body screamed for rest, but he couldn't afford to give in. The trial was about testing endurance, and he was determined to show the queen, and everyone else, that he could do this. At some point, he stumbled upon a ravine, a deep chasm that seemed to split the land in two. The wind howled through the gap, and Elias could feel the pull of gravity threatening to send him tumbling down into the depths below. He could hear his breath coming in ragged gasps as he looked at the sheer drop on either side. The only way forward was to cross. With no other options, Elias began to climb. The rocks were jagged, sharp, and unstable, but he didn't stop. Each movement was a challenge, his body screaming for him to rest, to stop, but he couldn't. Not yet. He reached for the next handhold, his fingers raw and bleeding, but he kept climbing. The trial wasn't just about strength. It was about willpower, and Elias wasn't going to let anything stop him now. When he finally reached the top, exhaustion washed over him, but there was no time to rest. His body was sore, his mind foggy, and the world around him seemed to blur. He had crossed the ravine, but the trial was far from over. There were more obstacles ahead, and each one would push him further, testing his resolve. But Elias was ready. He had no choice but to keep going. He couldn't afford to fail, not now. As Elias continued his journey, the world around him seemed to shift. The once barren landscape began to change, and strange, alien creatures appeared in the distance. At first, they were nothing more than silhouettes on the horizon. But as Elias got closer, he saw them for what they truly were: massive, fearsome beasts that roamed the planet. They looked like nothing he had ever seen before. Large, muscular creatures, with sharp teeth and claws. Their eyes gleamed with an almost unnatural intelligence. Elias knew that he would have to face them. The trial was designed to break him in every way possible, and these creatures were a part of it. As he approached, one of the beasts turned its gaze toward him, its eyes narrowing as it sized him up. Elias felt his heart race. He didn't know what to expect, but he was prepared to fight for his life. The creature let out a low growl, and Elias instinctively reached for the weapon at his side. His pulse quickened, and his grip tightened around the hilt. He had been trained for situations like this, but nothing could have prepared him for the sheer size and strength of these beasts. They were unlike anything he had ever encountered. But Elias didn't hesitate. He had come this far, and he wasn't about to back down now. He took a deep breath, steadied his hand, and charged. The battle was fierce. The creature was fast, its claws swiping at Elias with terrifying speed. He dodged, rolling to the side, narrowly avoiding a strike that could have torn him apart. His heart pounded in his chest as he fought back. His mind focused solely on survival. The world around him seemed to fade as he concentrated on the fight. Every move, every strike, had to be perfect. There was no room for error. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Elias landed a blow. The creature let out a roar of pain as it staggered back. Elias saw his chance and pressed forward, using all his strength to land the final strike. With a last desperate effort, the creature fell. Breathing heavily, Elias stood over the fallen beast, his body covered in bruises and cuts. But he had won. The trial had tested him in ways he couldn't have imagined. But he had survived. He had proven that he could endure, that he could fight for what he believed in, and he knew, deep down, that he wasn't going to stop. Not until he had earned the right to stand by the Queen's side. With the battle behind him, Elias continued forward. He was tired, broken, but he was still standing, and nothing was going to stop him now. Elias had lost track of time. It felt as though the world itself had become a blur of endless trials, each one harder than the last. The landscape had shifted once again, and now he found himself in a dense forest, the air thick with humidity. The trees towered above him, their trunks twisted and gnarled, their branches covered in strange glowing moss. The sky overhead was overcast, casting an eerie pall over everything. He paused for a moment, catching his breath. His body ached with every movement, his muscles sore and fatigued from the constant strain of the trial. His throat was dry, and his vision blurred with exhaustion. He knew he couldn't stop now, though. The trial wasn't over yet. The Queen was waiting for him, and he had promised her he would return. The forest was silent. The usual sounds of nature absent. No birds, no insects, just an unnerving stillness that made Elias feel like he was being watched. He reached for his weapon, a basic energy blade strapped to his side, his fingers brushing the cool metal for reassurance. He had fought off creatures before, but he knew that whatever came next would be more dangerous than anything he had faced so far. Suddenly, he heard a noise behind him, a rustling in the bushes, followed by the soft crack of a twig snapping. Elias spun around, his heart pounding in his chest, but there was nothing. Just the wind moving the branches, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. He cursed under his breath and continued forward, his senses on high alert. Hours passed, or maybe it was days. He had lost track. The forest seemed endless, the paths winding and treacherous, and Elias felt like he was walking in circles. He could feel the weight of the trial pressing down on him, each step taking more out of him than the last. His body had grown weaker, and his mind was beginning to unravel. He needed rest, but he couldn't afford to stop. The trial would break him if he let it. Just as he thought he couldn't go any further, a figure appeared in the distance. It was barely visible at first, just a shadow moving among the trees. Elias stopped, squinting his eyes to focus. As the figure grew closer, he realized it was not an animal, but another human. Someone dressed in a similar suit, their face hidden beneath a hood. The stranger stopped a few paces away, and for a moment, the two of them simply stared at each other. Elias's hand instinctively went to his blade, but the stranger made no move to attack. Instead, they spoke, their voice low and calm. "You're not supposed to be here," the stranger said. Their voice was hoarse, as if they had been speaking for a long time. "This is the trial of endurance. Only the strongest survive." Elias narrowed his eyes, confused. "Who are you? Another contestant?" The stranger shook their head. "No."
"I failed the trial long ago. I'm a reminder."
A warning to others.
"A warning?" Elias repeated, his confusion deepening.
"The trial doesn't just test your strength," the stranger continued. "It tests your mind, your spirit."
It makes you question who you are, what you're fighting for. It makes you doubt everything you've ever believed in.
Elias didn't know what to make of the stranger's words. He had already been through so much, and now this person was telling him that the real danger of the trial wasn't the creatures or the harsh landscape. It was the battle within his own mind. It was as if the trial itself wanted to break him mentally, to strip away everything that made him human. "I'm not going to stop," Elias said, his voice firm. "I've come too far to turn back now." The stranger nodded, as if they had expected that response. "I thought the same thing. But you'll see. The trial will break you eventually. It will test your will in ways you can't imagine. And when it does, you'll have to decide if you're strong enough to survive it." Elias hesitated, but before he could respond, the stranger turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving Elias alone with his thoughts. For a moment he stood there, unsure of what to do. He had always believed that strength was enough, that if he could push through the physical challenges, he would survive. But the stranger's words echoed in his mind. Was he truly strong enough? Or was he just fooling himself? Shaking his head, Elias forced himself to focus. He couldn't afford to get lost in doubt now. He had to keep moving. The queen was waiting for him, and he couldn't let her down. He pushed forward, the forest growing darker as the sky above him thickened with clouds. The air grew colder, and the ground beneath him began to shift. It felt as though the forest itself was alive, shifting and changing as he moved through it. The path seemed to grow narrower, the trees pressing in on all sides. Then he saw it. A figure standing in the distance, illuminated by a faint ethereal glow. At first, Elias thought it was the stranger again, but as he got closer, he saw that it wasn't. This was something different, something far more terrifying. The figure was tall, its body slender and alien, with long, flowing tendrils, that seemed to move on their own. Its face was a blur of shifting shapes, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. It was a creature of pure nightmare, a being born of the very planet itself. Elias froze, his heart racing as the creature turned to face him. For a moment, neither of them moved. The creature's eyes locked onto his, and for a fleeting second, Elias felt as if it was reading his very soul. It was as if the creature could see every weakness, every fear, every doubt that lingered in his mind. "Why do you continue?" the creature asked, its voice echoing in his mind.
What is it you truly seek? Elias's throat went dry as he struggled to answer. What was he seeking?
Was it truly the Queen, or was it something deeper, something more personal? He had come this far because of her, because he believed in their love. But now, faced with this creature, he wasn't so sure anymore.
I seek to prove myself, Elias said, his voice barely a whisper. I seek to survive.
The creature tilted its head, its glowing eyes narrowing. Survival is not enough. You must understand why you fight, why you are willing to die for a cause that is not your own. Only then will you truly survive. Elias didn't understand. He had been fighting for the Queen, for the chance to be with her. But now the creature's words seemed to cast doubt on everything he had believed in. What was the point of surviving if he didn't understand the purpose behind it? Was survival enough? Or was there something more? Before he could respond, the creature vanished, leaving Elias alone once more. The world around him seemed to shift again, and for the first time in days, Elias felt truly lost. The trial had been testing him physically, but now it was testing him in ways he hadn't anticipated. It was making him question everything he knew, everything he believed in. He could feel his strength waning, his body growing weaker with every step. His mind, once sharp and focused, was now clouded with doubt. Was he truly capable of finishing the trial? Or was he just another fool who would fail like the stranger before him? But then, in the distance, he saw something that gave him hope. A faint light flickered through the trees. It was the faintest glow, barely visible against the dark forest, but it was enough. He knew what it was. It was the Queen's light. Her presence. Her belief in him. With renewed determination, Elias pushed through the darkness, the weight of the trial on his shoulders, but his resolve stronger than ever. The Queen was waiting for him, and he couldn't afford to fail. He would survive. He would finish the trial. For her, and for himself.